9. Ignition sequence.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
1-0 and liftoff.
Mission complete, Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle's earned its place in history and it's come to a final stop.
Egal, ob es sich beim Bundeswehreinsatz mit Patriot-Raketen in der Türkei eher um eine Art moralische Unterstützung oder um wirklich militärisch sinnvolle Hilfe handelt, Fakt ist, es war die Türkei, die unter anderem ihren Bündnispartner Deutschland um diesen NATO-Einsatz bat. Doch offenbar werden die deutschen Soldaten alles andere als freundlich am Einsatzort empfangen. Und damit sind noch nicht mal die bescheidenen Unterkünfte gemeint, da geht es den einheimischen Soldaten kaum besser. Vielmehr entsteht nach einem Bericht des Wehrbeauftragten nun der Eindruck, die türkische Armee schikaniere die Deutschen. Sogar von Rangeleien ist die Rede. Bettina Scharkus.
5 deutsche Soldaten werden von Einheimischen angepöbelt, als sie etwas einkaufen wollen. Es kommt zu Tumulten. So soll es geschehen sein in einer türkischen Hafenstadt am ersten Tag der NATO-Mission. Bisher ein Einzelfall. Thomas de Maizière gibt zu, er habe bei seinem Besuch der deutschen Soldaten an der türkisch-syrischen Grenze wohl eher die Schokoladenseite gesehen. Die Arbeitsbedingungen für die Deutschen sind offenbar nicht optimal.
Die Traditionen sind unterschiedlich. Die Soldaten vor Ort treten energisch und partnerschaftlich für die Verbesserung ihrer Bedingungen ein. Das geschieht auch Schritt für Schritt.
Schon zu Beginn des deutschen Patriot-Einsatzes gab es Misstöne, sogar Demonstrationen in Istanbul. Nicht jedem gefällt offenbar die Stationierung deutscher Soldaten auf türkischem Boden. Der Wehrbeauftragte zeigt sich alarmiert, die türkische Armee versuche offenbar Kontakte der Deutschen einzuschränken.
Ein Hauptproblem ist natürlich insbesondere auch die sogenannte Ausgeh-Policy, die die türkische Seite dort festgelegt hat. Die dürfen also nicht mit ihren Militärfahrzeugen rausfahren, sie müssen mit gemieteten Fahrzeugen rausfahren, die neutral sind und dürfen sich auch in der Stadt selbst nur in einem sehr engen Bereich bewegen.
Angeblich sollen türkische Generäle deutsche Soldaten sogar schikaniert haben. SPD-Chef Gabriel hat sich selbst vor kurzem vor Ort ein Bild gemacht. Er spricht von kulturellen Unterschieden.
Man muss immer wissen, dass dort 2 völlig verschiedene Kulturen aufeinandertreffen. Die Bundeswehr ist dort in einer türkischen Kaserne. Wir wissen, dass der Umgang türkischer Vorgesetzter mit ihren Untergebenen ohnehin schon nicht unseren Maßstäben entspricht.
Der Verteidigungsausschuss des Bundestages wird sich in Kürze mit den Vorwürfen des Wehrbeauftragten befassen.
Es ist knapp eine Woche her, dass Bundeskanzlerin Merkel die deutschen Soldaten in der Türkei besucht hat. Doch gezeigt wurde ihr wohl nur die Schokoladenseite. Erst der Wehrbeauftragte stellte nach seinem Besuch erhebliche Missstände bei der Unterbringung, vor allem bei den Sanitäranlagen fest.
Ich will mal so sagen, es gab noch keine Wasserspülung. Aber die Einrichtungen waren schon von anderen in Betrieb genommen worden. Offen gesagt, so habe ich es noch nicht erlebt.
Viele Soldaten klagen, sie seien keine willkommenen Gäste. Von Schikane, von massiven Spannungen zwischen den deutschen und türkischen Soldaten ist die Rede. Bei einem Besuch des deutschen Verteidigungsministers soll es zu Rangeleien zwischen einer jungen deutschen Feldjägerin und einem türkischen Lagerkommandeur gekommen sein. De Maizière reagierte heute gelassen und versprach bessere Einsatzbedingungen.
Die Türkei hat sich große Mühe gegeben, für gute Unterkunftsbedingungen zu sorgen. Sie sind auch nahezu fertig geworden, kurz vor meinem Besuch. Wenn diese neuen Unterkünfte fertig sind, wird sich vieles an dem, was dort vorgetragen worden ist, ändern.
Der Bundeswehrverband fordert für künftige Einsätze eine bessere Vorbereitung.
Ich möchte doch dazu raten, künftig erst die Infrastruktur sicherzustellen, bevor man Soldaten in den Einsatz schickt.
Eine schlechte Vorbereitung des Einsatzes, hinzu kommen unterschiedliche Traditionen und mangelnde Abstimmung. All das sorgt für die derzeitigen Probleme in der Türkei.
Im US-Steuerstreit hat Präsident Obama die gesetzlich vorgeschriebenen Haushaltskürzungen in Kraft gesetzt. Bis Ende September müssen 85 Milliarden Dollar gestrichen werden. Dazu werden Zehntausende öffentlich Bedienstete in unbezahlten Zwangsurlaub geschickt. Die pauschalen Kürzungen sind notwendig, weil sich die Parteien im Kongress nicht auf andere Sparmaßnahmen geeinigt haben. Obamas Demokraten fordern Steuererhöhungen, die Republikaner wollen Ausgabenkürzungen.
Der Himmel ist nicht eingestürzt über Washington, aber Barack Obama dürfte mit Kopfschmerzen aufgewacht sein, am Tag nach den gescheiterten Verhandlungen im Budgetstreit. Gestern Abend hatte der Präsident das Spardiktat unterzeichnet, zähneknirschend, denn er hält die massiven Etatkürzungen für falsch, erklärt Obama heute in seiner wöchentlichen Internetbotschaft. Diese Kürzungen sind unklug, sie schaden der Wirtschaft und kosten Jobs. Experten schätzen, bis zu 750.000 Stellen könnten verloren gehen, das Wachstum um ein halbes Prozent schrumpfen. Mit solch deutlichen Worten erhöht Obama den Druck nach dem verlorenen Politpoker um den Haushalt. Er hofft, dass die Republikaner im Kongress ihre Blockade aufgeben. Aber viele Experten halten dies für unwahrscheinlich. Die Polarisierung zwischen den Republikanern und den Demokraten hat heute ein Ausmaß erreicht, das kein lebender Amerikaner je zuvor gesehen hat. Und jetzt taumeln wir von einer Krise in die nächste. Es ist kein Ende absehbar. Immerhin, die Aktienkurse an der Wall Street blieben gestern stabil. Die Börsen haben sich an den Dauerstreit in Washington gewöhnt. Die US-Politik kennt nur noch das Drama, so scheint es. Demokraten und Republikaner streiten erbittert über Steuern und Schulden, haben seit 4 Jahren keinen ordentlichen Haushalt mehr zustande gebracht. Schon Ende März droht die Zahlungsunfähigkeit der Regierung. Präsident Obama wirkt hilflos in diesen Tagen. Die politische Lähmung in Washington geht weiter.
Just minutes ago from the Scottish cardinal who, until he resigned last week, was Britain's highest-ranking Catholic cleric. Cardinal Keith O'Brien has just admitted in a statement that he did indeed engage in inappropriate sexual conduct. O'Brien says, quote, "There have been times that my sexual conduct has fallen below the standards expected of me as a priest, archbishop, and cardinal." And he is apologizing to those he says he offended, to the church and to the people of Scotland. Matthew Chance joins us now on the line from London. Matthew, he is acknowledging he did something wrong. The admission is vague. What is he accused of?
It's very interesting, actually, because Cardinal O'Brien was accused last month, in fact, of having what were called inappropriate relationships with at least 4 junior priests back in the 1980s, and so that they're historic claims. 3 of the priests apparently still serving. One of them is now a former priest. And what's interesting is that initially the cardinal had categorically denied these allegations against him. He addressed that in the statement that is issued over the course of the past few minutes. He said that because of their non-specific nature and the anonymity involved in the claims from the 4 junior priests, he had decided to contest them. However, in the statement he goes on that he wanted to take the opportunity to admit, as you've mentioned, that there have been times, in his words, that my sexual conduct has fallen below the standards expected of me as a priest, archbishop, and cardinal. So him sort of making an about turn there on his previous statements regarding these incidents, and apparently, well, actually very much accepting that they're true.
Now, he is the highest-ranking cleric in the church in our times to admit to sexual impropriety. Others have been accused of it. A great many other clerics have been judged by both civil and church authorities, but he is the most senior cleric, as best we can tell in the moments since his statement, to ever acknowledge doing something improper personally. You were in Scotland. You had a chance to talk to his parishioners. What's the reaction been there to this shock about their leader?
Well, that's exactly the reaction. I mean, there's complete shock. I mean, Keith O'Brien really was, I mean, even amongst people that didn't agree with his views, and he was very outspoken, for instance, against gay marriage and gay adoption and things like that, supporting the church's doctrine on those issues. But even amongst people who, were opposed to those points of view, he was a central figure in Scotland, very prominent, publicly engaged in all sorts of, social debates taking place in Scotland, and he was, you know, somewhat of a celebrity, or is still somewhat of a celebrity in Scotland with regards, you know, to this cardinal. And so people from the Catholic Church, people from other faiths as well, completely shocked that somebody of this caliber could have been implicated in a scandal like this. In fact, what many people said that we spoke to is that, look, you know, we can't frankly believe it's true. And when you add to that the denial that the cardinal originally issued as well, I mean, that was enough for many people to convince them that this wasn't true. This was just, you know, some kind of bitter campaign to soil the reputation of this, you know, very prominent church leader. But you know, obviously, this statement has come out again within the last hour. You know, obviously, people are going to be very, very shocked indeed by his admission.
Matthew Chance, live for us from London. Thanks very much. We want to turn now to senior international correspondent Dan Rivers, live in Rome, with more details and reaction from there. Dan, I don't have to tell you, the timing of this could not be of greater embarrassment to the Church. The cardinals, the princes of the Church, are gathering at the Vatican this evening and in the days to come for one of the most sacred and important duties, to choose a new pope, to choose a new vicar of Christ on earth. And now this stain on the reputation of the cardinals because of this one man, Keith O'Brien, it's got to cast a terrible shadow.
It will do, undoubtedly. I mean, we were just sort of discussing the reason for the timing of this statement. Perhaps a sense from Cardinal Keith O'Brien, and he is still known as a cardinal, even though he's resigned, to get this out of the way before the General Congregation starts tomorrow in its discussions about the issues facing the Church, its discussions about possible candidates for the next Pope. Which will all begin to happen from 9:30 local time tomorrow. There will be two sessions tomorrow at 9:30 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, unusually, where all these suggestions and allegations of sleaze, of sexual impropriety, allegations of graft and corruption will undoubtedly be what will be being discussed in the corridors of the Vatican behind me as all of the cardinals begin to arrive, and some of them here already, many of them are arriving tomorrow as well. But this once again will bring to the forefront of everyone's minds that whoever they elect as Pope this time round has got to be completely unimpeachable in terms of their reputation, have totally clean hands, and be someone who is willing to tackle these allegations head on, a reformer who can try and somehow bring the Church back from this terrible crisis that it's currently embroiled in.
Queen Elizabeth hat einen Besuch in Wales wegen einer Magen-Darm-Infektion absagen müssen. Die 86-Jährige wollte dort an einer Militärzeremonie teilnehmen. Für die kommende Woche hat die britische Königin einen 2-Tages-Besuch in Rom geplant. Ob sie den antreten kann, ist unklar, heißt es vom Buckingham-Palast. Königin Elizabeth II. Ist in eine Londoner Klinik eingeliefert worden. Nach Angaben des Buckingham-Palastes handelt es sich nur um eine Vorsichtsmaßnahme. Die 86-Jährige hatte am Freitag schon einen geplanten Besuch in Wales wegen Magen-Darm-Problemen abgesagt. Auch ihre Termine für die kommende Woche wurden gestrichen.
So, Jonathan, we know she's going to be here for a couple of days. The trip to Rome that she and the Duke were meant to take next week has been postponed and or cancelled, and we are now just waiting for any updates, other than the fact that the palace say it is a precautionary method, a precautionary action being taken.
Now, it may seem counterintuitive to make this point now, but she's 86 years old, and considering a woman who is generally in remarkable health for her age.
Oh, I think the only phrase one could say is robust good health. And the Queen almost never falls foul or ill. Last year, she had to take a day off because she put her back out and had to cancel some engagements. But otherwise, the motto of the Queen is the firm goes on. And she will move whatever she has to make sure, because she knows people turn up to these engagements to see her and look forward to it. So it will be enormously disappointing to her that she's not being able to. The other thing to note is the royal family are notoriously bad patients. They want to get out as fast as possible. They know it causes fuss to the hospital, that causes delays to their engagements. But the Queen at 86, nobody is going to take any risks with Her Majesty's health.
Do we know where the other royals are? where her family is at a time like this?
They will all have been kept fully informed. Again, in terms of coming to visit the Queen, it's not just as easy as popping along to see her, because first of all, they will all have their own engagements that they don't want to disrupt or ruin the royal schedule. But clearly and obviously, if she is in hospital, then we might expect to see Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, maybe the Duchess of Cornwall. I would not think it likely that we'll see Prince Philip because he's over 90 himself, but you never know. It all depends on whether or not the graveness or gravity of the Queen's illness and how much they don't want to disrupt everything else that's going on around them.
Richard Quest, live at the hospital. Thanks very much. Let's take a closer look at the Queen's illness and what it means for the royals. We're joined by royal commentator Mark Saunders. I presume you were hearing what Richard Quest was telling us. We don't know a whole lot. Have you been working your sources? Do you know more than the rest of us?
No, not really. I mean, on Friday morning, I was at Windsor Castle routinely because I was expecting the Queen to leave for Wales. And the first inkling we got that there was something wrong was the usual movements you associate with the Queen when she's leaving weren't happening. Then, of course, on Saturday, we learnt the news that she was suffering from gastroenteritis, which is fundamentally, it's a stomach bug. Now, I was told this morning that her problem was keeping fluids down. This is quite common. You know, the Queen is 87 next month. She is an old lady, and when it comes to this age, doctors are concerned. So when they say a precautionary measure that she's gone to hospital, they wouldn't lie. I mean, that's obviously true. But the problem with that word in precautionary measure is it can be so ambiguous. For the Queen to be moved to a hospital, I think it's more serious than we were led to believe yesterday. Remember, the medical facilities at Windsor Castle, Balmoral, Sandringham are first class and excellent. So for her to be moved to Edward VII, it is cause for concern, I think.
Now, another question is how she got it. It's an infectious disease. But then again, she meets a lot of people. She shakes a lot of hands. She's in the line of work, I guess. You could get sick doing.
And also, she was attending a National Health Hospital recently on an official engagement. And that is, in recent news, as the National Health Hospitals are a place where these sort of illnesses can be picked up. I really don't think the Queen would have caught it from there. She's very active. She's out and about all the time. She's doing engagements all the time, and she's meeting people all the time. So there are many places where she could pick it up. But as I say, fundamentally, we are talking about a stomach bug, and these sort of things do happen to elderly people. There's not a great deal of dignity in it's not a dignified illness, a stomach bug. So I'm sure the doctors will be keeping a very close eye on her.
Let's find out more. Mark Saunders, live from London. Thanks very much. Gastroenteritis, it's also called stomach flu. It involves an inflammation of the stomach and or intestinal lining. Enough biology. Let's get some more details. Elizabeth Cohen, our medical correspondent. How serious is this for an 86-year-old woman?
Jonathan, it could be anything from this will just pass and she'll be totally fine to there could be complications. We just heard this described as a stomach bug, and that really is the perfect term for it. It's usually a virus that's spread person to person. Sometimes you get gastroenteritis from food, but that's less common. Gastroenteritis in the elderly can, and actually with anyone, can happen if you've just recently been on antibiotics. That can leave you more vulnerable to it. And the treatment is basically a whole lot of nothing. There's not much that they can do in most cases. Most cases, antibiotics won't help. They try to keep people hydrated and comfortable, and that's about it.
Yeah, and we heard from royal commentator Mark Saunders that she was having trouble keeping fluids down. We don't know that, but that would be consistent, I guess, with what you're describing.
Yes, that certainly would be, and that's why doctors are so careful about hydration, especially with the elderly. The elderly can get dehydrated quite easily. So the gastroenteritis may not be a big deal, but the dehydration becomes a big deal. And the elderly, if they get dehydrated, can, pretty quickly go into having renal trouble, kidney trouble. So they want to watch out for that.
Just a personal question here about the Queen. She was at work in a public engagement just before she was taken to hospital, even after she was diagnosed with gastroenteritis. Fair to say she must have been in some kind of pain? I mean, she must have been she is a pretty tough cookie. She must have been pretty tough to go to work that day and try and get through the day before they decided to take her to hospital.
Oh, yes. I mean, gastroenteritis has kept far younger people at home for the day. You know, a lot of people would call in sick with that kind of an illness. So, yes, it's tough. I mean, this as Mark just said, this is not a dignified illness, very sick, diarrhea, throwing up. I mean, it would give her a lot of credit if she's able to work through that.
Senior medical correspondent Elizabeth Cohen, thanks very much.
Visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control Houston confirming Dragon spacecraft at its 30-meter hold point at 3:58 a.m. Central Time. Dragon will now hold here while the teams conduct a review of all of its systems and then complete a go, no go.
At 30 meters, you can perform step 4 in 1.102 Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Spacecraft well into view there. You can see the grapple fixture on the Dragon spacecraft there in view now, where the Canadarm2 will reach out and connect with the Dragon spacecraft. Following that successful grapple, control of the Canadarm will be handed off from our astronauts down to the teams here in Houston. We'll then maneuver and rotate the Dragon around in order to install it on the bottom side of the space station's Harmony module.
Station Houston on space to ground 1. You are go for the capture sequence. You can perform step 4 in 1.110 and begin monitoring the backaway cue card.
We copy. We have a go. We're in step 4 and we have the backaway cue card.
Good readback.
The robo here down in Houston confirming that robotic arm in motion. You can see it as it continues to close in on its capture point located there on the Dragon spacecraft. Tom Marshburn and Kevin Ford inside the cupola controlling this arm, reaching out for grapple with the Dragon. Robotic arm just 1 meter out now from capturing Dragon. And capture is confirmed of this Dragon spacecraft. That capture time 4:31 a.m. Central Time, while the Dragon and the International Space Station were flying just over northern Ukraine, about 243 statute miles. while the arm slowly maneuvers Dragon in a little bit closer. The robotics officer down here in Mission Control Houston continuing to do any necessary alignment adjustments. Flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston confirming that first stage capture being done successfully. So that first stage again, 7:44 a.m. Central Time. That's just the first step in this birthing process, this final step of the birthing process.
CBM, step 4 is complete. You're go to take SSRS mode to low.
Houston copies.
The second SpaceX resupply mission to the International Space Station was successfully launched from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida Friday at 10:10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The company's Dragon cargo capsule, loaded with more than 1,200 pounds of scientific experiments and cargo, rode atop a Falcon 9 rocket. Shortly after separation from the rocket's second stage, Dragon was unable to command 3 of its 4 thruster pods. SpaceX engineers worked to purge blocked valves and get the pods back online, restoring the spacecraft's attitude control. Upon its arrival to the orbital laboratory on Sunday, Dragon was captured by the crew with the station's robotic arm and berthed to the International Space Station at 8:56 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The delivery flight is the second contracted resupply mission by the company under NASA's Commercial Resupply Services contract. The Dragon capsule is scheduled to spend 22 days attached to the station before returning for a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Baja, California, March 25th.
How do you see the evolution of commercially sponsored research sort of taking place down the road?
A discussion about the groundbreaking science research being conducted aboard the International Space Station was part of a series of NASA briefings at the Kennedy Space Center.
We really have, as you've heard, great capacity on the ISS to meet the needs of a large number of users. And it just provides the opportunity for real innovation and for things to advance quite quickly.
During another session, NASA officials talked about the agency's human deep exploration efforts with a progress update from the Orion and Space Launch System programs.
It is a very key element of our overall plan to get humans back beyond Earth orbit as quickly as we can. We are working very diligently to our first test flight, which will come up in September of 2014, called Exploration Flight Test 1.
Orion and SLS will enable astronauts to travel beyond low Earth orbit to the most distant destinations ever. Powering the upper stage of the SLS will be the J2X engine. Engineers at the Stennis Space Center conducted this year's second test of the J2X. The full-duration 550-second test firing provided critical information on the combustion stability of the engine and on its performance with a nozzle extension. The exercise was also used to further evaluate the clamshell configuration of the A2 test stand, as well as calibration of the facility's cryogenic flow meters. Parts for the next generation space launch system are being created here at the National Center for Advanced Manufacturing Rapid Prototyping Facility. NASA Administrator Charlie Bolden was at Marshall Space Flight Center to tour the high-tech manufacturing facility that impacted America's manufacturing sector last year to the tune of an estimated $5 billion. Bolden watched a type of additive manufacturing called selective laser melting create complex parts for the J2X and RS-25 rocket engines.
Anything that we do in spaceflight, whether it's human spaceflight or otherwise, Marshall's involved. People who live here should know that Marshall is an integral part of NASA. It's who we are.
Done without welding, selective laser melting also saves time and reduces the cost of creating component parts for what will be the largest launch vehicle ever built. NASA's Van Allen probes have discovered a previously unknown third radiation belt around Earth. Traditional observations long showed the Van Allen belts as two distinct regions of trapped radiation. These new high-resolution observations by the first dual spacecraft mission to fly through them show that there can be three long-lasting belt structures with the emergence of a second slot or empty region.
The International Space Station is down below the inner belt. This new ring is actually much further out than that. It's at about 12,000 miles above the surface.
These radiation belts, named for their discoverer, Dr. James Van Allen, are affected by solar storms in the form of coronal mass ejections, space weather, and can swell dramatically. When this occurs, they can pose dangers to communications and GPS satellites, as well as human spaceflight activities.
This is going to teach us a lot about how effectively the magnetosphere can store and maintain an electron population for extended periods of time.
Scientists using particle detection instruments flying on board the twin spacecraft also found unexpected structures and processes within these hazardous regions of near space. The new discovery shows the dynamic and variable nature of the radiation belts and will improve our understanding of how they respond to solar activity. The spin rate of a supermassive black hole has been measured definitively for the first time. NASA's X-ray Observatory, Nuclear Spectroscopic Telescope Array, or NuSTAR, teamed with the European Space Agency's XMM Newton for the findings. They solve a long-standing debate about similar measurements in other black holes and will lead to a better understanding of how black holes and galaxies evolve. The observations are also a powerful test of Einstein's theory of general relativity, which holds that gravity can bend light and space-time. The X-ray telescopes detected these warping effects in the most extreme environments, where the immense gravity field of a black hole is severely altering space-time.
The annual Aerospace at Annapolis Day, organized by Goddard Space Flight Center, attracted about 400 people, including state lawmakers and midshipmen from the Naval Academy. NASA exhibits on hand included a full-size model of the Mars Curiosity rover. Attendees spoke with scientists who work with sample analysis at Mars, one of Curiosity's main instruments that was built at Goddard. Goddard Center Director Chris Scalise talked about the significance of events like this to NASA and the local community.
The purpose is to go off and inspire students and educators to pursue and teach the science, technology, and engineering and mathematics fields so that we can inspire the next generation to move on, so people can see that they can work here in Maryland and accomplish some really great things.
Other missions showcased included the Landsat Data Continuity mission and the recent successful on-orbit demonstration of the robotic refueling mission. The event, hosted by the Maryland General Assembly, was also an opportunity for NASA to get valued feedback, and Scalise liked what he heard.
Yes, I did. We met with the governor today, and he was very interested in what NASA's doing and looking forward to greater things from the Goddard Space Flight Center.
The Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex unveiled a new logo for the Space Shuttle Atlantis exhibit, still under construction at the Florida Spaceport. Atlantis, the shuttle that flew the final mission of a 30-year-long shuttle program, has been positioned inside the exhibit hall as it will be displayed, wheels up, tilted 43 degrees, to get the same look it had when leaving the International Space Station. By the time the Atlantis exhibit opens June 29th, Atlantis will have its cargo bay doors open and its robotic arm extended. The Space Shuttle Atlantis attraction will feature dozens of interactive displays highlighting different aspects of the Space Shuttle and Atlantis itself. The exhibit will be on Kennedy property, only a few miles from the runway Atlantis touched down on July 21, 2011, to close out NASA's longest human spaceflight program.
As you can see from the background, we've made a lot of progress from over a year ago when we broke ground to build a new home for Space Shuttle Atlantis. We've come a long way since then. And today is another milestone in the process, from groundbreaking to building the building to topping it off and to getting to towards the grand opening date. We want to reveal today the grand opening date and also show you the logo and the name for the new home for Atlantis. Before I do that, I want to introduce the president of Delaware North Parks and Resorts, Rick Abramson, who's joined us today. Rick's an old friend of NASA and of the visitor complex. He's been here before. In fact, he was here in the original contract that Delaware North signed with NASA and started working on the Saturn V building, which today is an icon for all of our visitors from around the world. So he's here again today to lead our team in this collaborative effort with NASA as we open Space Shuttle, again, as a momentous tour stop and a part of the history of NASA that we're pleased to share with folks. Rick recently became president of Delaware North Parks and Resorts after heading the Sports Service Division for most of the last decade. He has a lifelong career with Delaware North, included president and chief operating officer of this complex, and his work was so highly thought of by NASA that he was awarded a Public Service Medal, which is the agency's highest achievement award for a non-governmental employee. In 2002, Rick was named, he got the honor of receiving the Kurt Debus Award from the National Space Club, again for the role in educating and inspiring visitors from around the world to see and understand what NASA does in spaceflight. So it's my pleasure today to introduce Rick Abramson and put this all in perspective and announce when we're going to open the doors. So Rick?
Well, if I seem a little nervous, I am. Whenever I get back here, my heart gets pumping. This is the first time I've been back here in an official capacity in over a decade, and just seeing the changes, seeing the new entrants, seeing everything that's gone on here has been something else. I'll tell you, I had the ability to be part of this here when the Saturn V came and we first took over the contract, and it was exciting. But nothing's more exciting now. Our challenge then was to tell people the NASA story and get them excited. Our challenge has not changed. In fact, our challenges may become a little more challenging. But we're here, and I'm excited to be here today. It's great seeing so many of my old friends and acquaintances and fellow Bavard people. It's great seeing old friends. Seeing Todd come back. You know, Todd is like the Moses, I think, of the space program now. I'm not sure. But he's certainly been here for a while, and though he hasn't changed, so much has changed. There's so many incredible improvements that you'll see here, and today is an opportunity for us to celebrate just another stop in our journey here at Delaware North to tell the NASA story. This stop today is at the new home of the Atlantis Space Shuttle. And this is all possible because of the vision of NASA, its Center Director, Bob Cabana, and I was just at the community, some of you were at the community breakfast, and you know, from the outside, and I was in Washington last week, and people do think that, you know, everything's closed in Bavard. It isn't. If you can see if people could be in that briefing today with the Center Director and see how the program's progressing and where we're going, it's very much alive. And through his vision, we have this facility right here. The new facility for the Space Center Atlantis is really a symbol of the growth and excitement of the Kennedy Space Center and the visitor complex. You see the new entrance. You remember we had the shuttle ride experience, and now we have this. And I just toured the inside of it. The present is wrapped, but it's a hell of a gift here. I'll tell you what, this is going to be a heck of a gift for the whole Space Coast and for all the space people here. It's a monumental transformation that's happened here in the 18 years. And Todd might remember, some of you might remember, it was a red tour and a blue tour and a kind of a dusty Saturn V that was sitting out in front of the VAB when I said, is that a real rocket? And they told me yes. And when we took that rocket and refurbished it, and it was loaded with different things and things growing out of it, things around it, and moved it over, it was a new beginning. Well, this is another new beginning. The Atlantis exhibit is an immersive environment, as it was at the Saturn V. People here will have an opportunity to get closer to this real live space artifact than ever before, than any other place. With this connection comes a greater understanding and appreciation of the 30-year history of the space shuttle. 30 years and some amazing things that will inspire people for the future. It really gives me great pleasure to announce the opening date for the shuttle, Space Shuttle Atlantis experience here. The date, and put it in your calendar, is June 29th, 2013. That's just 128 days from now. We invite you to come and see it, to see what this tells the story, what happens here, and for you to experience this extraordinary building. From the Apollo Saturn V Center to the home of the Space Shuttle Atlantis, we're trying to bring extraordinary experiences and the incredible achievements of the space program to the guests of the Kennedy Space Center. I will tell you, matter-of-factly, there is no place on Earth that you'll be able to experience and showcase NASA and space exploration like here. To continue to tell the NASA story, past, present, and future. We're paving the day for the new space programs, and I'm excited as ever. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks very much for that. You know, the challenge for us now is to figure out what to call this place behind us. And it's great to have Rick back, part of Delaware North and part of the Kennedy Space Center complex again. Let me give you a little bit of background about the process we went through to name the building and the exhibit about Atlantis. First of all, we worked very closely with NASA, and this probably sounds like something we say sort of automatically, but it's really true. We've been allowed to go in places that very few of those outside of the rocket launch system are allowed to go, to understand and really see what it's like to launch a shuttle into space. We've gained access to some remarkable men and women who cared for the shuttle for a long time, and for them, it's not a vehicle, it's not just a piece of hardware, it's part of their lives. And so for us, we had to come up with a way to recognize that in a name, which is not an easy job to do. We had one of our companies that we worked with was PGAV, which is a design firm out of St. Louis, Missouri. I'd like to take just a minute to recognize Mike Conzen today from their team who's here. He's the principal of PGAV Designs. He's the architect of the building and the designers of the logo that you're about to see today. You know, we went through literally hundreds of name combinations for this, and it was interesting that we looked at them all, and all of them had somewhat of a similar theme. First of all, we had to figure out a way to convey to the public around the world, what does Atlantis stand for? And it stands for a remarkable program. It stands for a vehicle never unlike flown before in space, and it may be a long time before we see something like it again. It's a very interesting history. It's a very rich history, and there are a lot of people involved. Not only those who flew her, but those who supported her and built her. And it's a real honor to be able to do that today. The name should convey some sense of emotion that we all feel when we rolled Atlantis in the building and we watched her lift off the last time and when she stopped after she finished STS-135. It should evoke a sense of place, of people that people understand when they say, well, you know, I'm going to go see this exhibit. People will say, well, what was it like? We want people to understand that. But the name should be simple. These days we see a lot of creativity in names, and sometimes simple gets the word across the best. So there were three words that kept coming up in all of the logo work. These are not hard words. Space, it's a very simple word, but yet conveys so much. A shuttle. You know, you can do orbiters and you can do OV-104s, but the reality is to a lot of people around the world, it's a shuttle. And then the name of the vehicle itself, Atlantis. And so we put all those words and try to figure out what to call it. And it's very simple. It honors the soul of what it is. And it will be simply called Space Shuttle Atlantis. For the logo you're about to see, it represents what the Space Shuttle program is all about. Try to some way capture the fiery entry of the shuttle's return to Earth, the flame and smoke when it leaves Earth, the tiles behind us that symbolize the heat protection that the vehicle had, the iconic silhouette of an orbiter on pad, and we're going to use that to outline the A in Atlantis. The NASA insignia, which is one of the most well-known logos around the world, is a reminder of the pride and the patriotism of America's space program. You'll also see the words from the Kennedy Space Center paying tribute to the launch site of each of the Space Shuttle program's 135 missions spanning more than 30 years. So without any further ado, I'd like to ask Space Shuttle astronaut John McBride and Rick Abramson to come up and help us unveil the logo. Back to where I was here. So I'd like to thank again the PGAV team and all of our folks at Delaware North for helping develop a logo that's both monumental and patriotic, featuring Atlantis as the centerpiece. You'll start to see this logo on the big monument sign that'll be out here in front of the building, as well as on our retail and marketing materials in short order. So for a quick update on our construction process and where we are in getting the building ready to go, as Rick reminded us, only 128 days to get the building open. I'd like to introduce our Director of Project Development and Construction, Tim Macy. Tim?
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rick, especially for reminding me it is 128 days. There's no pressure on that. You guys have all been out here a bunch, and since we rolled over on November 2nd to where we all are today, there's been a lot of changes in here, and I can't wait to show you what's going on. A couple of dates to understand. We are going to be open on the 29th of June to the public. We've got an opportunity here in the next couple of weeks to start construction over here on my left. We start construction of the ETSRB replica versions. That will be 186 feet 11 and 1/16 inches tall, plus a little, so it'll probably come up at about 190 feet. It's going to be pretty spectacular. A company called Penwall out of California is helping us with that. We've said a lot of times that we're using a lot of local suppliers and vendors and subcontractors. Again, Whiting Turner's our general contractor here. Nazel out of Orlando, BRPH, again, PGAV, who's helped us. BRPH is our firm that helps us with engineering, et cetera. So we're very happy about that. One of the next big timeline for us, of course, is we'll continue on construction, and we're pretty much almost 24 hours a day working here, probably 20 hours right now because we're doing a lot of painting at night. But in May, mid-May, what we'll do is we'll peel away the plastic that encases Atlantis right now. We'll peel that away. Everything will be all dusted off, and we'll open the payload bay doors. And that'll take us about 5 weeks to complete and puts us into mid-June. And by that time, this will also be constructed and ready to go somewhere around the 17th of June right now. I've had the opportunity to go to Nazel, the exhibit company, and work with Mousetrap out of California to work on the content of the theater and the shows that are here. It's really fantastic, and I think you're going to be very happy with it when you see it. We've got Gardley out of Apopka Island area that's putting together the Hubble telescope as well, and that looks fantastic. So we're well on our way. We're very happy with construction on time. Don't really foresee any issues about opening on the 29th, and we're happy to be here. I can take any questions on construction that you have right now, and then I'll turn it back over to Andrea. Any construction questions? Yeah, we're working on that. It's we're within budget. It's kind of a number we kind of hold on to here till we get it all put together. We're saying it's a $100 million project total, all up. That includes moving the orbiter over here as well.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia to broaden our view of the universe through the Hubble Space Telescope.
On March 1st, 2002, Space Shuttle Columbia launched on STS-109, also known as Hubble Servicing Mission 3B, the fourth servicing mission to the Hubble Space Telescope. During the 11-day mission, Columbia's crew of 7 installed new equipment that, among other improvements, dispensed the telescope's newly increased power and doubled the camera's coverage area with more speed and clarity. In 2009, work was performed during a final servicing mission that is expected to keep HST in operation through 2014. And 41 years ago, on March 2nd, 1972, Pioneer 10 launched on what would prove to be a mission lasting more than 3 decades. Pioneer 10 was the first spacecraft to travel through the asteroid belt and the first spacecraft to make direct observations and obtain close-up images of Jupiter and its moons. This historic event marked humans' first approach to the gas giant and opened the way for exploration of the outer solar system by future spacecraft like Voyager, Ulysses, Galileo, and Cassini. After more than 8 billion miles traveled over more than 30 years, Pioneer 10 sent its last signal to Earth on January 23, 2003. And that's This Week at NASA.
This is Mission Control Houston. Welcome to today's ISS update. It is Monday, March 4th, 2013. The crew of Expedition 34 on board the station is busy working on quite a bit of transfer work today. Of course, the big news is that the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft has arrived at the station. It launched last Friday at 10:10 a.m. Eastern Time. That was 9:10 a.m. Central Time. Dragon spent 2 days heading up to the International Space Station. It performed a rendezvous and docking with the orbiting complex yesterday, Sunday, at 4:31 a.m. Central Time. The crew of Expedition 34 was working at a robotics workstation down in the cupola to take a look at Dragon as it closed in. They had control of the station's 58-foot-long robotic arm as they got ready to reach out and grab onto Dragon. The actual installation, which was a ground command, took place at 8:56 a.m. Eastern, and then the crew opened up the hatches of Dragon just a few hours later at 1:14 p.m. Eastern Time. Dragon is bringing up 1,268 pounds of supplies and science operations to the crew. It's going to be taking home 2,668 pounds of supplies. But the crew has been busy all day today, and they will continue working over the next several days, getting everything unloaded out of this cargo craft. Kevin Ford, the commander of Expedition 34, called down, giving an update. They have finished moving the glaciers. There were 2 glacier freezers flown up to the station, one that was powered and was full of science. It'll be packed full of return items and stored back on to Dragon at the conclusion of the mission. There was an unpowered glacier that was also flown up that will simply be stored aboard the International Space Station. Also quite a bit of cold bags. These are just basically sample bags that are used to put scientific experiments into and return back to Earth. We're also going to be setting up one of the experiments that flew up to Dragon. That's going to be taking place during the almost 3 weeks that Dragon will be docked to the International Space Station. One of the experiments that is being flown up there is what's called the Coarsening and Solid Liquid Mixtures number 3. This is a materials science investigation that will take place while Dragon is docked to the station. It takes a look at the growth and solidification processes in lead, tin, and solid liquid mixtures that contain a small amount of what's called tin branch-like or dendritic structures, or dendrites. What this will do is help ground operations as they make different types of metals and higher quality products as they study the differences between what you see in microgravity versus what happens on the ground. So that is CSLM number 3. They're going to get that set up later on this afternoon, and that experiment will run for about 20 days while Dragon is docked to the International Space Station. Of course, to read more about CSLM number 3 or the rest of the science that Dragon has brought up or any of the other Expedition 34 operations, just log on to the NASA website at nasa.gov/station and take a look at research and technology. While the crew is busy working on Dragon, they are also, half of them, getting ready to come home, coming up in a little more than a week and a half. Kevin Ford, Oleg Novitsky, and Evgeny Tarelkin getting close to wrapping up, close to 6 months on board the International Space Station. Their undocking will take place on March 14th at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. That'll be 6:30 a.m. on March 15th there in Kazakhstan, which is the place where they will land. Their Soyuz will undock. It is the Soyuz TMA-06M. It will undock at 7:30 p.m. Central Time with a deorbit burn at 10:04 p.m. Central Time. And then landing will take place at 10:57 p.m. Central Time. Again, that will be the next day in Kazakhstan, March 15th. Those times will be 9:04 a.m. Kazakhstan time for the deorbit burn and 9:57 a.m. Kazakhstan time for the Soyuz landing.
Das Problem des Mülls, um den es jetzt geht, ist, dass es bislang keinen richtigen Mülleimer dafür gibt. Radioaktiver Abfall strahlt lange, selbst wenn es sich nicht um Brennstäbe aus den Atomkraftwerken, sondern nur um schwach radioaktives Material aus Forschungslaboren oder Krankenhäusern handelt. Da der Abfall von Tag zu Tag aber immer mehr wird, versuchen Firmen, die Fracht loszuwerden oder zur Verarbeitung weit wegzuschicken, zum Beispiel bis in den US-Bundesstaat Tennessee, zum Beispiel nach Oak Ridge, einer Stadt, die 1942 als geheime Atomstadt gegründet wurde und lange auf keiner Landkarte zu finden war. Tina Hassel über deutschen Atommüll in den USA und ein Restaurant mit einer seltsamen Speisekarte.
Schon morgens beim Frühstück dreht sich in Oak Ridge alles um die strahlenden Geschäfte. Atomburger, die Frühstücksbombe oder lieber das X-Ray-Röntgen-Omelett. In Oak Ridge ist man entspannt beim Thema Atom. Der Ort lebt von der Nuklearindustrie und das seit seiner Gründung. Dass Atommüll aus der ganzen Welt hierher geschippert wird, ist kein Thema. Die meisten da draußen haben Angst vor atomarer Strahlung, weil sie nichts davon verstehen. Wir hier können damit umgehen und dann verschwindet auch schnell die Angst und keiner macht sich mehr Sorgen. Zäune und Wachposten, wohin das Auge reicht. In Oak Ridge lagert das Militär riesige Mengen hoch angereichertes Uran. Tennessee ist der einzige Bundesstaat, in dem die kommerzielle Verbrennung von Atommüll erlaubt ist. Erstmals ist auch nuklearer Abfall aus Deutschland hier hingebracht worden. Monate haben wir gebraucht, bis wir hier drehen durften. Energy Solutions, die Firma, die den Deal mit dem deutschen Atommüll eingefädelt hat, ist einer der ganz Großen im Geschäft mit atomaren Altlasten. Im japanischen Fukushima soll sie die verseuchten Gebiete reinigen. Im heimischen Oak Ridge werden zunächst 1000 Tonnen verstrahlter Abfall aus Deutschland verbrannt. Ein Geschäft mit Zukunft, das auf beiden Seiten diskret gehandelt wird. In diesen grünen Containern fährt der deutsche Abfall in die Verbrennungskammer und wird später auf ein Zehntel der Menge reduziert als strahlende Asche wieder nach Deutschland verschifft. Angesichts des deutschen Atomausstiegs hofft die Firma auf lukrative Geschäfte. Zunächst ist die Lizenz auf 5 Jahre begrenzt. Diese Fabrik erschien Deutschland am sichersten und besten geeignet. Auch andere Länder schicken uns ihren atomaren Müll. Kanada, aber auch Belgien, Frankreich oder Großbritannien. Es ist nicht ungewöhnlich, dass Atommüll um die Welt transportiert wird, um ihn hier zu verbrennen. Oak Ridge ist abhängig von der Nuklearindustrie. Auf der Highschool prangt als Schullogo das Atomsymbol. Ohne die Jobs vom Militär und den zahlreichen Verbrennungsanlagen wäre der Ort nicht lebensfähig. Wer da unbequeme Fragen stellt, gilt schnell als Nestbeschmutzer. Frank ist Anwalt und Kopf der örtlichen Umweltschützer. Er erzählt, dass die Landschaft nur idyllisch wirkt. Auf dem Clinch River kann geangelt werden, essen aber darf man den Fisch nicht. Der deutsche Müll ist nicht mit dem Einverständnis der Einwohner von Tennessee hierher gebracht worden. Die Regierung hat das fast unsichtbar eingestielt, hat unsere Aufrufe zu öffentlichen Anhörungen und mehr Transparenz abgelehnt. Wir haben die Einladung zu diesem Deal nicht ausgesprochen. Die meisten in Oak Ridge aber sehen das anders. Zurück im Diner, hier ist man zufrieden mit den neuen Geschäftsverbindungen nach Deutschland. Warum steigt ihr aus der Atomenergie, fragt man uns verständnislos. Deutschland macht da einen großen Fehler. Billige Energie ist sehr wichtig für ein Land und seine Bürger. Und so hoffen hier viele auf weiteren Atommüll aus Deutschland und eine Ausweitung dieser neuen transatlantischen Zusammenarbeit.
Davon wäre Erich Honeckers größter Wunsch gewesen. Demonstranten in Berlin fordern, die Mauer muss her. Nachdem es vor über 20 Jahren mit dem Abriss des verhassten Bollwerks nicht schnell genug gehen konnte, protestieren nun seit Tagen Tausende dafür, dass es so stehen bleibt, wie es ist. Das längste original verbliebene Mauerstück. Die berühmte Eastside Gallery soll wegen eines Neubaus zum Teil weichen. So ist es mal beschlossen worden. Doch weil dieser Plan jetzt sogar in der internationalen Presse gegen die Wand fährt, macht der regierende Bürgermeister Klaus Wowereit die Mauer nun zur Chefsache. Der Streit um die Eastside Gallery offenbart, dass in Berlin vor allem eines längst beschädigt ist, nämlich der Umgang mit der Geschichte. Oliver Jarasch berichtet.
Mauerschutz, das hätte sich kaum einer träumen lassen, dass mal jemand dasteht und aufpasst, dass die Mauer bleibt. Aber es ist eben auch kaum vorstellbar, dass überhaupt einer auf die Idee kommt, die Touristenattraktion zu durchlöchern und die Mauer einzureißen. Das ist so interessant hier. Ich glaube einfach, es ist wichtig, dieses Symbol der Teilung zu sehen. Ich finde, es sollte alles genau da bleiben, wo es ist. Aber die Idee, hier eine Lücke zu reißen, gibt es tatsächlich. Kommerz gegen Gedenken. Denn hier hinter der Mauer soll ein Luxuswohnhaus gebaut werden. Und das braucht einen ordentlichen Zugang. Der wurde auch genehmigt. Ein Mauerteil bereits entfernt. Berlins oberster Mauerschützer versteht diesen leichtfertigen Umgang mit der Geschichte nicht.
Die Stadt muss, glaube ich, in längeren Zyklen denken. Wird darum gehen, die Denkmalbedeutung noch stärker herauszuarbeiten, denn so viel Mauer ist nicht mehr da, als dass wir uns erlauben könnten, hier und da immer wieder ein Stück abzuzwacken.
Das sehen viele so. Proteste am Wochenende. 10.000 haben einen richtigen Sturm der Entrüstung entfacht.
Wo bereit? Das Denkmal bleibt!
Love Parade-Erfinder DJ Motte, einer von der neuen Mauerbewegung, die vorerst Erfolg hat. Die Arbeiten sind erstmal gestoppt und jetzt will der regierende Bürgermeister selbst die Mauerlückengenehmigung überprüfen.
Mir geht es jetzt darum, dass man aus diesem Schaden, der angerichtet worden ist, die richtigen Konsequenzen zieht. Richtige Konsequenzen können nicht sein, dass hier alles auf Null gedreht wird, sondern dass da, wo unsinnige Dinge passieren, man Riegel vorschiebt.
Also kein Mauerdurchbruch dort, wo ihn der Bezirk genehmigt hat, ein Kompetenzwirrwarr. Der zuständige Bürgermeister von Kreuzberg, der das zu verantworten hat, kritisiert nun wiederum Wowereit für die verkorkste Stadtplanung. So ein Luxushochhaus passe grundsätzlich nicht her.
Riesige Gebäude, die Mauer zu einem Vorgartenmäuerchen degradieren, beeinträchtigen die Mauer in ihrer Bedeutung noch mehr.
Der Investor versteht das alles nicht. Klar sei das eine Superlage. 20 Wohnungen seien schon verkauft. Er habe doch eine Genehmigung.
Wir werden unser Haus errichten. Die Frage der Erschließung wird sicherlich noch mal diskutierbar sein.
Also vielleicht doch kein Loch in die Mauer? Das Hin und Her wirkt umso absurder, als die Eastside Gallery längst durchlöchert ist. Gegenüber der großen Veranstaltungshalle wenige 100 Meter daneben wurden schon vor Jahren Fakten geschaffen. Eine riesige Lücke klafft in der Mauer, sogar mit eigenem Bootsanleger.
Damals gab es große wirtschaftliche Interessen, diese Halle zu bauen. Und dafür wurde dann Denkmalsubstanz geopfert.
Kommerz statt Mauergedenken, ein typischer Berlin-Konflikt. Ob mit Lücke oder am Stück, die Eastside Gallery bleibt eine Attraktion.
Im Vatikan haben die Vorbereitungen für die Wahl des neuen Papstes begonnen. Kardinäle aus aller Welt sind in Rom zusammengekommen, um hinter verschlossenen Türen über ein Datum für den Beginn des mit Spannung erwarteten Konklaves zu entscheiden. 12 Kardinäle mit Stimmrecht fehlten am Nachmittag noch, darunter auch die 3 Deutschen, Joachim Meissner, Karl Lehmann und Rainer Maria Wölki.
Kurz nach England, die Briten können aufatmen. Königin Elisabeth II. Hat am Nachmittag das King Edward Krankenhaus in London verlassen. Gestern war die 86 Jahre alte Monarchin wegen einer Magen-Darm-Erkrankung in die Klinik eingeliefert worden. Mit Hilfe der Ärzte bekam sie die Probleme aber offenbar schnell wieder in den Griff.
Is smiling, dressed in red, as she left the hospital today.
Live from CNN Center, this is the International Desk with Hala Garani.
She was there very briefly for a brief stay. She walked out of King Edward VII Hospital with a smile. You see her there dressed in red 1 day after being admitted for symptoms of gastroenteritis. This is only the second time in the last 10 years that the 86-year-old monarch has been in the hospital. Max Foster joins us from outside the hospital with the details. So she's back at Buckingham Palace, Max?
She is. She's there overnight. The Royal Standard is flying high above Buckingham Palace, but she has still cancelled all of her engagements for the week, including a very high-profile visit to Rome. She really wanted to make that, but she's not going to be able to do that now, and she's letting the Italian president down, something that she doesn't like to do. And that really expresses the seriousness of what really we've had over the last couple of days, because she hasn't been in hospital for 10 years, and she doesn't cancel engagements as a rule. And this is something that she would have been concerned about, but she has come out of hospital after a day. We were expecting her to be in for 2 days. She didn't want any fuss, she didn't want any visitors, very much Queen Elizabeth in that sense.
but there was a lot of concern around this. I have to say, Hala, we still don't know exactly what it was that was wrong with her, because she had symptoms of gastroenteritis, but we still haven't been told whether or not that was what she was suffering from.
Right.
But she certainly looked well when she left the hospital, so positive news.
Thanks so much, Max Foster in London.
Good afternoon. I don't address anyone in particular, but to all of you. Okay. So the questions will be the emergency situations. So you will go according the cyclogram, the failures, the documentation, all the procedures. You will probably say a few words to the Commission. Please proceed closer to the railing. Are you ready? We are not ready yet. Please go ahead with your questions. So you will have to fly not to 2 days, but to just for a few hours. Is it a relief or is it a trial for you? Well, it is trial and relief at the same time. I think it's much more interesting when you fly faster. It's just like in a train, you know, whether you take by fast train, Sapsan, 4 hours or much longer, it's a big difference. So in the system of the training, has anything changed? Did you have to take some new exams? Actually, we didn't have any new exams because all the systems of the vehicle, they are the same, but the work is more intense. There are no new systems or modes in the vehicle, but the coordination work of the crew, of course, should be better. That's all. So apart from the experiments made especially for the 60th anniversary of the station, will you have to perform any new experiments this time? We have actually a big program of experiments. 60 years anniversary actually is more load than a celebration for me. It would be better for me 30 or 40-year anniversary. We have a very intense program of research. June will be very intensive month. There will be Russian EVAs and American EVAs. We will be ready to receive a few vehicles, American, European, and our Russian vehicles. It's a very intense schedule. So what research experiments will you perform on the station? The research experiments are within the framework of the research program that a few increments have been doing on the station. For example, we will complete a whole series of experiments that are called plasma crystal. It has been performed on the station for over 10 years. So this will be completed, and also will be new experiments on biotechnology that are traditional, of course, trend, but it is a continuation of the biotechnology experiment. There will be many technical experiments and stuff. Well, I can go on and on about our research program. So how was your training complicated? Well, I am in the crew with the very experienced colleagues. I think probably it could have been more complicated if my colleagues have not been so experienced. In this case, I'm just try to be as good as them. What I'm expecting, I think any person expects from an adventure that I am going to have. I think it's a big adventure. It's a great event for me. Are you scared of anything? I think, the questions of whether you are scared or not and what you are scared of should be asked at the very beginning stage of the training. I think it is too late to ask this question. Thanks a lot. Please wave to us. Please wave to us.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
А вы мне потом экзаменационный материал дождетесь, как красный цвет.
Chairman of the examination board, the prime crew of Soyuz Tema 8 is ready for the qualification exams. Expedition 3536. Go ahead. So the documents are here. It's a birthday today. Happy birthday. Great. Well done, guys. Yes, you've done everything. You will have to talk about communication. Please be very, very attentive. Mind the steps, please. So we will have to perform the program as it should be, without any failures. That will be the main task of our crew.
For me, it's just the camaraderie of the international crew that we have with Canadian, American, Russian, and then Italian when Luca arrives later in the increment. So that camaraderie of all of us together, working together on the International Space Station is very exciting.
I have nothing to add to Pavel Vladimirovic's words. I also think that it should be the most exciting trip in my life.
Yesterday you were taking exams on the Russian segment. How were the results of the exams? We are satisfied. We, received a 5. A very good grade. So everything was nominal. Yeah, we could have been better, but unfortunately they didn't give more than 5 grades. Okay, so good luck to you and shake your hands. So who should we shake hands with? Please look here. Look at us. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So you are ready to go? Well, they are smiling. So the backup crew is ready for the training. How are you feeling? Great. Well, don't ask, but I'm fine. So you have analyzed everything, you are prepared. Yes, I had breakfast. Okay, that's clear that you had breakfast. So don't scare us before the exam. Any questions? Okay, so everything is ready at the trainer. So what was the specifics of the training of the backup crew? Any difficulties? So you had an exam on Friday. What is the difference? I think the big difference of our training is that all operations that usually were done over 2 days' time were compressed to just 6 hours. But actually all the operations were the same, but we had to be more attentive, and the work was more intense.
English, I know you know English. You're about to make a historical flight, a 6-hour flight instead of the regular 48 hours. What type of preparation did you have to do that in comparison with your predecessors who flew before you?
Yeah, the preparation for the 6-hour flight has, for the most part, been very similar to what we trained with before. There's just been some adjustments to the program and the flight program, and so we just had to go through that several times, but other than that, it was very similar.
Thanks a lot. We wish you good luck. What is your opinion? What the most difficult stages will the crew face? Well, there might be many difficulties. That's why the training of the crew takes so long. The peculiarities of this flight are the following. The first time we will try the short approach to the station. We tried the short rendezvous on cargo vehicles, so we had some experience of this short approach, but we are trying it for the first time for the manned flight. That was the reason for the changes in our examination schedule. So the mode for the approach actually is continuous. It's not intermittent. That's why we had to change examination program a bit too. We hope everything will be nominal and the crew knows what to do in case of failures. And we always have a backup in case of any failures of the navigation and in the approach system, and we will just go to the long way of approach that we had before, in case something happens. So a lot of colleagues of yours had the long day flights before. So why it was for so long, if it is possible to have a short, actually, orbit approach? Well, it's a long story. Before, actually, at the very first stage, we had the short orbit approach. So what is important when you approach a station, it is very important to have burns on time. So we started with one-day approach, and it was very complicated for the ground systems on the one hand, and on the other hand, the backup also was in the way. So 20 years ago, the decision was taken that two-day approach actually is more effective. It is more propellant effective and efficient. And so when I flew, I took this approach in Soyuz vehicle. And of course, we had some backup versions as well. What has changed now? Now we have on board new machinery and new software, so the vehicle is more autonomous right now. So it is a possibility, to do a lot on board the vehicle and to calculate the burns so that not consuming a lot of fuel, to be able to approach the vehicle in an efficient way. So we tried this approach on the cargo vehicles before, and now we are trying to do it on the manned vehicles.
The next members of the International Space Station crew all believe that their 6-month mission is an important part of the work that's needed to help human beings continue to explore well beyond their home planet. Pavel Vinogradov was born in the far eastern Russian town of Magadan and grew up in the even farther eastern town of Anodir, just 500 miles across the Bering Sea from Nome, Alaska.
If you have been to Alaska, then it's pretty much the same. The nature is just fantastic. Of course, the climate is very harsh, 8 months of winter, lots of snow and ice, but I love it. I enjoy it.
After a childhood spent dreaming of becoming a pilot, Vinogradov left Anodir after high school for the Moscow Aviation Institute. He earned a degree in rocket booster design, then taught and did research at the institute while earning a second degree in computer systems and systems analysis. Vinogradov joined the design bureau of the Rocket Space Corporation Energia in 1983 and worked on the Mir space station, the Buran shuttle, and other Energia vehicles before being selected to Energia's Cosmonaut Corps in 1992. He logged 198 days in space as the board engineer on Mir 24 and made 5 spacewalks to repair Mir after a Progress freighter punched a hole in it in the summer of 1997. He made one more spacewalk in 2006 as commander of the International Space Station's Expedition 13, a 183-day mission that restored the station's crew complement to 3. He believes today's space exploration efforts bear comparison to the sea voyages of the great explorers in the Age of Discovery.
People who were exploring the Earth did not know that they will discover America in 4 months, for example. The risks were great. But I have no doubt that, likewise, we, as those explorers, we need to explore space.
Retired Russian Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Mazurkin is a product of Western Russia, born in Yershi-Chi in the Smolensk region and raised a couple of hundred miles away in Oriol. He calls his childhood a typical one and says even as a young boy, he wanted to go places no one had been to before.
I wanted and decided to be a cosmonaut when I was a little boy. When I was a 13 years old guy, I went to the aviation club. There I made parachute jumping. There I was flying on gliders.
Becoming a pilot was next on his list. After school in Oriol, Mazurkin went to the Kasha High Air Force Pilot School in Volgograd, then finished his pilot training at the Armavir Military Aviation Institute in Krasnodar in southern Russia. He spent the next 7 years in the Russian Air Force as a pilot instructor at the Krasnodar Military Aviation Institute before being selected as a cosmonaut in 2006. Mazurkin shares the philosophical view of the Russian rocket science pioneer Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, who believed that Earth is the cradle of humanity, but that mankind can't stay in the cradle forever.
He was positive that we are going to the space and we will live in in other worlds, in other different places, and the time will come in for this, I'm sure. That is why I think we should do this job.
U.S. Navy Commander Chris Cassidy is a native of Salem, Massachusetts, who grew up in York, Maine, on the Atlantic coast. He was aware of the space program as a young boy, but admits he wasn't particularly interested.
I was just like every other boy. I mowed lawns, had a couple odd jobs in restaurants and things in the summertime, but that was all to really pay my gas to drive to the basketball court.
Cassidy left York after high school, first for a year at the Naval Academy Prep School, and then on to Annapolis, where he earned a bachelor's in mathematics. Next stop was San Diego to begin training in special operations as a Navy SEAL. After 4 years stationed in Virginia, he earned a master's in ocean engineering at MIT. And about that time, he became aware of a fellow Navy SEAL who'd had a similar career arc to his, astronaut Bill Shepard.
So one day I actually met him or called him, and he gave me some great information, and I thought, you know what, that sounds really like a really fun job. I think I'd like to do that. So I was probably 26 or 27 when the idea first popped into my head.
Cassidy applied, but didn't get the call from NASA. The next year, just weeks after September 11th, the SEAL platoon he commanded did get the call, and he was deployed to the Afghanistan region before the 1st of October. He returned home to another posting in Virginia, and he was selected for the astronaut program in 2004, just days after coming home from a second deployment to Afghanistan. Cassidy made 3 spacewalks on his first trip to the International Space Station, on the 2009 Space Shuttle mission that delivered the components to complete construction of the Kibo Laboratory Complex. He's enthusiastic about his part in laying the groundwork for some future generation of Earthlings to fulfill their destiny, to find a new home in space.
But there'll be a time when there'll be people living on other planets. And it's the hard work that we're doing right now, all of us across the globe, that are going to set the stage for that type of environment. Just like Christopher Columbus set sail one day across the ocean. And thanks to those great explorers, we live the life that we do today.
Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is the International Space Station. Yes, we're ready for the event.
Monrovia Unified School District, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call the station for a voice check.
Station, this is Shelley Bogus here with Monrovia High School. How do you hear me?
Monrovia High School, we have you loud and clear. Greetings aboard the International Space Station. From the crew of Expedition 34, I'm Kevin Ford, along with Tom Marshburn and Chris Hadfield. We are happy to talk to you today.
Great.
Hi, I'm Sonia. How do you digest your food without gravity?
Well, I'm glad we can. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know exactly how it works, but I know, like, when I'm in bed at night, I can still digest my food. My organs have a way of processing the food that works without the help of gravity. It is a little bit different. It takes a little while for our bodies to get used to being up here. My digestive system wasn't exactly normal after I got here for several weeks, and it's always been a little bit different than Earth. But I feel good, and I can digest all my food. We have to eat a lot more up here, it seems to me, than I do on Earth. So I think there are still some mysteries left, and hopefully one of these days all the smart scientists will figure it all out, maybe like you.
Hello, I'm Jack. Is it always night and never day on the ISS? Also, what language you use since it's an international space station?
Well, you know, Jack, we go through 16 sunrises and sunsets a day. We're going 17,500 miles an hour. So that means time on the space station could be any time we want to. So between all the international partners, we decided we're going to use Greenwich Mean Time. and the ground sets our schedule, and they tell us when it's time to go to sleep and when to wake up. So that's how we do it. But we can't look outside and tell. Right now, the official language that we use on the space station is English, but we love learning Russian and speaking Russian with our Russian colleagues. We work a lot of our procedures in Russian, and about a third of the time we're speaking Russian. And if there's an international partner up here from Japan or from any of the countries in Europe, then we'll hear that language as well. It's a lot of fun learning new languages up here.
Hi, my name is Angel. What do you miss most about Earth and why?
Hi, Angel. You know, it's a really interesting place to work up here. We are busy. There are experiments. The view out the window is unbelievable. But it's not the same as being on Earth. And I think for me, I don't know what the other crew members think, but for me, the thing I miss the most is just the physical contact of living with family and friends on Earth. The hugging and handshakes and just being with people around that that you know and you love. This is a good, hard-working crew. We have lots of stuff to do, but everyone likes being welcomed and close to family. And I think that's one of the things I'll really look forward to when I get home, is just hugging my kids and my wife and seeing people and that physical contact of being around everybody that you love all the time.
Hi, I'm Kalani. What is it like to float in space?
Well, we can show you how happy it makes us. How's this? Well, it's very unusual at first. Imagine if you found yourself just floating at home, or imagine what your pet would think if it found itself floating. It's a little crazy the first time it happens to you, and you're a little insecure. You want to grab a hold of things. You want to have pressure on your feet, or when you sit down, you'd like to have pressure on your backside. But we never have that up here. Even when we're sleeping, we're floating almost touching nothing. And I would say it's a lot like being in warm water in a pool or something, if you close your eyes and imagine just floating and having no pressure points on you anywhere. So it's really unusual. After you get used to it and you think about it, it's really a lot of fun. You can just pick a corner of the room and float up into that corner and enjoy floating back down. And of course, we like to play a lot of games up here in Zero G. So there are a lot of advantages to being up here. I don't think you'd want to do it forever, because we are really engineered and made for gravity, and I like running around and walking through parks and stuff like that. So there are things I miss about Earth. I even miss gravity about Earth. But I do like floating around for the time I've been up here for 4.5 months or so.
Hi, my name is Jared, and what do you do during your free time on the ISS?
Well, everybody's got their favorite thing to do during free time. We don't have a lot of it. Some of us like to play guitar, some of us like to read, but one thing everybody loves to do, and that's to look out the window. We've got the most spectacular view I can imagine, being 250 miles above the Earth, so we're always looking for interesting, beautiful landforms. We're looking for cities that we recognize, even new cities we've never been to, and we've learned an incredible amount about the geography of the Earth and what it really looks like, not just what it looks like on a map. So probably the most popular thing to do in our spare time is to look out the window.
Hi, my name is Grant. What inspired you to become an astronaut?
Hey, Grant. You're going to grow up to be something. Guaranteed, you're going to grow up to be something. And the question is, how's that going to happen? And who and what are you going to grow up to be? And it's really up to you, 'cause you're the product of the decisions that you make. And for me, when I was your age, I was inspired by the very first people who left Earth and walked in another heavenly body, another planet. The first two people who walked on the moon. And their names were Ed and Neil. Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong. And to me, I just thought, You know, it was up until yesterday, it was impossible to walk on the moon. And now people have done that. And I thought, who knows what's going to be possible for me, but I'm going to start getting ready. I'm going to start thinking about things that I can do, that maybe someday I could do something like that. And over the last 40 years, I turned myself into an astronaut, like we all did here, and give us a chance to do something like this. And it was because of those people who inspired me.
Hi, I'm Emily. How do you emotionally prepare your mind to go into space for so long?
Hi, Emily. That's a really great question. Staying in space for 5 or 6 months is very challenging. We know before we volunteer, of course, that we're going to be here this long, and it's something we just set our sights on. When I was thinking about coming, I was thinking about how many weekends I had up here. I have about 22 or 23 free weekends. The rest of the time, I'm really working hard, and the days just are flying by. And what would I like to do with those weekends? And to me, 22 or 23 weekends in space didn't seem like very many to me. So frankly, the time has flown by for me, and I didn't expect it to seem long. But for those things where you have to, like I might get an extension and spend maybe more months in space, and when I have to face something like that, I just kind of face it one day at a time, and I realize that, you know, if I have to be someplace that I wouldn't want to be for a long time, I love being here, but if it was something that I wanted to get through, that each day or each hour is just, it's that much shorter for me that I have remaining. If I have to do a long run for exercise or something like that. So it's just kind of a mental game I play with myself, and I'm used to handling those kinds of challenges, those long challenges when they come.
Hi, my name is Steven, and why doesn't the space station run out of oxygen?
You know why? It's because of a lot of very smart people that planned and building this spaceship. And that's why we need a nation with a lot of knowledge and history, a spacefaring nation, to be able to figure these things out. So we bring up air in tanks, and there's oxygen in there. We also brought up liquid oxygen in tanks that's sitting on the outside of the space station. That's really precious liquid there. We don't want to use that very much. But we have a lot stored up here if we need it. Well, one of the coolest things, I think, is the oxygen we breathe in and then breathe out again, and that comes out in our sweat. That's all grabbed by the system of the space station, and they take those oxygen molecules back out, those systems do, and put it back into the air so we can rebreathe a lot of that oxygen. So we use up just a little bit. We have supplies on board, but we reuse a lot of the oxygen as well. It's a brilliant engineering system, and it's really proud to be a part of it.
Hi, I'm Gregory. What have you discovered in space that has surprised you?
You know, this was my third space flight, and on the previous 2 flights, I tried to tell people afterwards just how beautiful it is, what an amazing experience, a new experience it is. But on this flight, because of new technology that NASA has put up here, we can send pictures and sounds and things from the space station almost right away to the Earth, so that people can really start to see this new thing that people are doing. And because of that, because of all the different ways, the social media and like talking to you today, what's really surprised me is the huge amount of reaction to that. The hundreds of thousands of people all around the world that are directly following what we're doing here, really interested in what we're doing, and actually making it part of their lives. So I think the thing that surprised me the most, and that I really like, is the huge support and interest in this new human exploration of space that we're part of.
Hi, my name is Phoebe, and what is the best part about being in a low-gravity environment?
Well, the floating is really, really fun. Like we said before, your food floats, your microphone floats, and your friends float. But what the coolest thing, I think, is are the experiments that we can do in this it's for all practical purposes, zero gravity. And we can do things with fluids. We can watch a glob of water react in front of us, or we can watch it inside a very expensive and intricate chamber to study flow dynamics. We can study combustion, where things are burning in an environment where the gravity doesn't force airflow, because on the Earth there's a phenomenon called convection. When things burn, it pulls air in from one side, and without feeding it air, it burns differently. And we have combustion racks up here and fluids racks, and we can study the way we behave, or we age and we change in the microgravity environment, and the way plants and animals do also. So there's just many things you can study without gravity that can tell us a lot about the intricate details of the way things work on Earth. We can either take them back to Earth, or we can use them as knowledge learned for future space flights. So that's really the coolest thing about being out here.
Hi, my name is Eve, and what do you do in case of an emergency?
Hi, Eve. We've got that all planned out right now. And what we can do is, the main thing we can do is use our Soyuz, our spaceship that brought us up here. We always have that sitting on the outside dock, ready to bring us home if we need it in case of an emergency. But first, we'd take a lot of steps. And we've trained quite a bit with our Russian colleagues, with all of our crewmates, to make sure that we know how to get oxygen if we need it, to protect the space station if we need to, in case we have an emergency on board. So if none of that works, and there's a lot that we can do to help save the space station and keep ourselves safe, but if none of that works, we can go straight to our Soyuz and get home if we need to.
Hi, my name is Carolina, and what is the most important job on the space station?
Carolina, I think the most important job in the space station is always the one you're doing right now. Because you can mess everything up with one little mistake. And even something you don't think is important. Let's say you're just taking a picture at the window with your camera, and you inadvertently bump the window with your camera and put a big scratch in the window. Every astronaut, every picture taken from that moment on is going to have to live with that scratch. Or even if you're just going to the bathroom, and if you do something wrong, we have a careful sequence to make our space toilet work. If you mess something up there, and you mess up the toilet on the space station, it seems like nothing important, but boy, it has a real impact on life on station. And that's one of the things you have to constantly remind yourself as an astronaut, is there's nothing more important than the thing that you're doing right now.
Hi, my name is Evan, and what does it feel like during liftoff?
Well, that is like one of my favorite things I've ever done in my life, as liftoff. I was a pilot before I became an astronaut, and I love flying fast things. I got to fly fighter aircraft, and the acceleration you get from the afterburners and the engines is very similar to the feeling you get on liftoff. We climb into the rocket, and in the case of both the space shuttle and the Soyuz rocket that I flew up here in, you lie on your back. It's like lying on the floor, maybe with your feet up on a stool or something, and you're just waiting, and when the rocket finally lights, it starts to push you away. And it's like being in a car that's accelerating. It's pushing you backwards, and you feel vibrations. You feel the rocket moving a little bit left and right and a little bit up and down. And as you get lighter and lighter, because the fuel is being used up, you get more and more and more pushing until you feel like you weigh 3 times what you weigh on Earth's surface. And then sometimes you get staging and a new rocket starts, and then the G's will let up a little bit, and you'll feel heavy but not as heavy, and then they build up again. And then when you finally get into space and the rocket shuts down, you're instantly in zero gravity, and you're floating. So it's a very dynamic part of the flight. It's a very fun part of the flight. It's very intense, and we love doing it. It's an adrenaline rush, and I'd love to do it more, but it's a very expensive and special thing to get to do. So that's what it's like, and I hope you get to do it someday.
Hi, my name is Nicholas. What is the process like to go through the atmosphere and into outer space?
Well, Kevin described what it feels like. You know, it all starts sitting on the launch pad after at least 2.5 years of training just for that flight. So that's the first step in the process. But once the rocket brings you up, one thing you can feel going through the atmosphere that's very interesting is the computer in the rocket is constantly recalculating the orbit that you've got to get to, the target that you're heading for, and you can feel that. You can feel the engine moving a little bit under the direction of the computer, and it's almost like a speedboat. If you've ever been in a boat on a lake going over wakes, just bouncing on top of the waves. So you can feel kind of a bounce, a rhythmic bounce, as the rocket's figuring out where to put you in space. You can feel a little bit of the turbulence of the air, and then as soon as you get out of the atmosphere, the push from behind from the acceleration of the rocket is nice and smooth. And as Kevin mentioned, it's just a huge pressure, kind of a gorilla on your chest. You're taking your breaths in sips at that point. And it's just a push all the way up until the main engine cut off.
Hi, my name is Farah. How do you wash your clothes in outer space?
Hi, Farah. Well, how do you wash your clothes on Earth? Normally, you put them in a washing machine, and then a lot of water comes in, all the soap gets in, mixes it all up. That soapy water goes somewhere, and then more clean water comes in, rinses them. That goes somewhere, and then more clean water comes in for a final rinse. It takes a lot of water to wash clothes. And then what do you do with all that soapy, dirty, used water? You need a great big processing plant. Well, we could do that on the space station. We could figure out a space washing machine, but it's just not efficient, the weight and the cost and the complexity of it. So we found it's actually just simpler just to not wash our clothes. And in fact, we just wear our clothes until they get dirty, and then we throw them away. It is not as gross as it sounds, because number one, we never sit down or lie down in our clothes. So you never lie on your clothes. Your clothes just sort of float on you. So they don't get rubbed against your body and get dirty nearly as quickly. Also, the space station's a big clean place. So you hardly ever get dirt or grease or anything on your clothes. So it's really not too bad. We have a supply of new clothes. And it's cheaper and easier that way than it is to try and figure out a way to properly wash them. So if you're an astronaut, you just throw your dirty clothes away.
Hi, my name is Cameron. Who flies to space?
Okay, I think yeah, the who flies the spaceship when we're asleep. The ground control is always watching over our spaceship. In fact, the International Space Station is really operated by a team on the ground and controlled through satellite. There are onboard computers that also monitor it in case ground can't talk to the space station. It has kind of an automatic mode that it's flying in. It knows what it's supposed to be doing, and the computers continue to fly it. There are computers in the Russian segment watching the computers in the U.S. segment, and they agree on what should be done, and that's the way it's controlled. So if anything needs to change, like we would need to turn to a different attitude, maybe for a rendezvous or docking or something, then the ground control will put that in and it flies itself. So normally we don't on board actually control it. It's all controlled by the fantastic team on the ground who's down there supporting us all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year round.
Station, this is Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes the event.
Station copies.
This is Mission Control Houston. Welcome to today's ISS update. It is Tuesday, March 5th, 2013. The crew did make good progress over the last couple of days unloading the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft. As of yesterday evening, the crew has completed all of the removal of the cargo that came up to the International Space Station. There was more than 1,268 pounds of supplies and research that came up to the orbiting complex. The crew is way ahead of the timeline in terms of unloading all of that cargo, to the point that the ground controllers have asked them to take a pause while they figure out exactly how they want the crew to pack this cargo craft full of the items that will come back to Earth at the end of the month. There's 2,668 pounds of materials and experiments that are going to be coming back home, including some unneeded crew supplies, some experiments from the Canadian Space Agency, the European Space Agency, JAXA, which is the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, and of course NASA itself. So all of that will get packed on board Dragon and will come back what is scheduled for March 25th. Dragon also has some external cargo. There are 2 grapple bars that weighed 602 pounds together that are in the unpressurized section of Dragon, basically the bottom inside of the spacecraft. Those are going to be removed tomorrow, but in preparation for that, the crew and the ground controllers here in Houston are going to be doing some robotic operations. The ground teams are going to command the station's arm to take a peek at Dragon's trunk, which is the bottom portion of the spacecraft, to make sure that everything looks good and is ready to support the removal of those grapple bars coming up tomorrow. That should begin around 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Those grapple bars will be stored on a payload attachment point on the mobile base structure of the International Space Station. Ultimately, they will be stored, one on the S1 truss, and the second one will be put on the P1 truss, both the left and right-hand side of the station, coming up during a future spacewalk. Meanwhile, as we mentioned, Kevin Ford, Oleg Novitsky, and Evgeny Tarelkin getting ready to wrap up their time aboard the International Space Station. Their Soyuz will undock on March 14th at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. That'll be 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be the morning of March 15th there in Kazakhstan at the landing site. They're going to be landing on the northern side, just to the northeast of the town of Arkelik. That is, as we mentioned, the northern zone. The ground forces will be based in the city of Kustanai. As that Soyuz undocks, the recovery helicopters will lift off the ground and head out toward the landing zone. The deorbit burn for the Soyuz will actually take place at 10:04 p.m. Central Time. That'll be 9:04 a.m. the next morning in Kazakhstan. And then the actual landing will take place at 10:57 p.m. Central Time, or 9:57 a.m. there in Kazakhstan. Of course, we'll have live coverage here on NASA television of all of the day's activities as Kevin Ford, Oleg Novitsky, and Evgeny Tarelkin get ready to wrap up 143 days in space, 141 days aboard the International Space Station.
A bonanza of work is coming to job-starved Brevard County.
Northrop Grumman, the giant defense and aerospace company, plans to bring 920 jobs to Melbourne.
West News' Dan Billa reports the county has a ready workforce for those kinds of jobs.
Aerospace engineer Jim Lawrence has worked in the aerospace industry for decades, including at Boeing and Rockwell Collins, but right now it's tough finding work.
I've submitted maybe 150 different resumes to different companies and not had one call.
But Northrop Grumman will be calling engineers like Lawrence and a lot of others when it hires 920 people at a new Melbourne location. Northrop Grumman already builds radar systems for military aircraft here and does a great deal of additional defense work with its current workforce of about 1,400.
Well, I think it's tremendous. I think we still have a tremendous amount of individuals have an engineering background.
The aerospace giant is reorganizing, moving workers from Long Island and other centers, and creating here in Melbourne a manned aircraft center for excellence. That's right up the alley of many laid-off space shuttle workers in Brevard, and has Jim Lawrence sounding hopeful too.
I'm glad it's happening. I think it'd be a perfect opportunity for me.
There's just one problem. It'll take 2 years to get the new center up and running.
Today would be nice.
At the same time Northrop Grumman is expanding here, it's also sending part of its Melbourne operations to a different location. But the net should be a big jobs gain for Central Florida. Dan Billow, West 2 News.
The race is on to find ways of mining on the moon. It's taking hold in where else? California. Alistair Leathed reports now from Silicon Valley.
There's no such thing as a final frontier in Silicon Valley, and there's a lot of big thinking.
Our friends at NASA have given us clearance to show you the hover test facility and our lander test vehicle.
Bob Richards wants to mine the moon.
So the focus of the engineering effort at Moon Express is, of course, the lander itself. And this is the prototype.
Moon Express is trying to make money out of landing on the moon. There's $30 million in X-Prize money to land on the surface, deploy a robot, and send back pictures by 2015. This is where the testing takes place. The vehicle needs to learn how to land itself. there's too much of a delay to control it from Earth, but success can bring great riches.
The most important thing about the moon is probably the stuff we haven't even discovered yet, but what we do know is that there could be more platinum group metals on the surface of the moon than all of the reserves of Earth. We know that there's water on the moon, which is a game changer for the solar system. Water is rocket fuel. It also can support life and agriculture. So exploring the moon commercially is a first step towards making the moon part of our world, what humanity considers our world.
And the race is on. China has been launching moon probes and, knowing the huge potential, wants to land on the moon as well, with robots and astronauts. But can any one person or country own the moon? The 1967 Outer Space Treaty says not.
Well, if we, pun intended, drill down a little bit more into the Outer Space Treaty, we find that whereas appropriation and ownership of the moon is not allowed under the treaty, free access, free use, and free exploitation of the moon is not only encouraged, it's codified, it's in the treaty. And so, well, on the one hand, we have this, you can't own it, but on the other hand, international law says you can go there and you can use it. So how do we balance those two?
There could be a moon rush in the coming decade, and I think there will be as nation states realize the importance of the moon.
This might be a NASA research facility, but these are private companies that are competing to be the next ones onto the surface of the moon. The commercial world is increasingly driving space exploration. It's got to be worth someone's while to help mankind take its next big step. Alistair Leith at BBC News, NASA Ames Research Center in California.
Sternwarte in Remscheid. Welcher Komet ist denn das, den wir dann da sehen können?
Ja, der hat einen etwas merkwürdigen Namen. Pan-STARRS heißt er. Ist benannt nach einem Observatorium auf Hawaii. Die haben das dort entdeckt und deshalb hat er den Namen verpasst gekriegt.
Und wann können wir den sehen?
Wenn alles gut geht, am besten am Wochenende vom 16. bis 17. März.
Ist also noch ein bisschen hin. Und
ja.
Ich muss aber mein Teleskop rausholen oder kann ich da auch mal mit bloßem Auge so ein bisschen den Himmel absuchen?
Ja, Gott sei Dank bietet sich der Komet relativ gut im Auge, nämlich im unbewaffneten Auge. Sie können also so rausgucken.
Sie sagen dazu unbewaffnetes
ja.
Auge?
Ja, weil man so ein Zielfernrohr hat.
Okay, das unbewaffnete Auge, das kann dann gucken. Okay, und in welche Richtung so ungefähr müsste ich schauen dann?
Nicht nur ungefähr, sondern möglichst nach Westen,
okay.
Da wo die Sonne gerade untergegangen ist. Ungefähr 2 Stunden danach ist der Komet gerade noch zu sehen, aber ziemlich flach über dem Horizont, damit Sie eine Vorstellung haben, bei ausgestreckter Arm etwa in der Höhe über dem Horizont wird er stehen. Wird sehr schwer zu sehen sein, weil immer noch die Dämmerung da ist.
Okay, ich stelle mir sowieso vor, im Moment ist es ja schwierig, es war gerade Vollmond, sehen wir jetzt in den nächsten Nächten, die sind ja toll und klar, überhaupt so richtig was Schönes oder ist es so wie immer?
Nein, es ist jetzt sehr schön, endlich mal wieder nach langer Durstphase. Wir sehen jetzt den Sternhimmel des Winters rund um den Orion. Der ist sehr auffällig, weil er in der Mitte 3 hintereinander stehende Sterne hat. Und drumherum,
welche Richtung für Leute, die jetzt so gar keine Ahnung haben?
Ja, in südlicher Richtung. Da steht das richtig schön, also man kann es nicht verfehlen. Drumherum ein paar sehr helle Sterne gruppiert. Eigentlich der schönste Anblick des Himmels, den wir so haben.
Jetzt muss ich ja doch noch mal einmal zum Schluss mit Ihnen schimpfen. Mensch, der Sternenhimmel ist perfekt und Sie waren letzte Nacht nicht draußen. Was passiert?
Es war doch ein bisschen arschkalt. Also da bleibt man doch schon mal gerne zu Hause.
Okay, also sich bewaffnen, wie ich gerade gelernt habe, mit dem Teleskop. Und damit ich es dann richtig mache, wie dick muss dann die Kleidung für draußen sein?
Dicker, so dick wie es nur geht. Also es ist sehr, sehr kalt. Gerade wenn es klar ist, dann wird es besonders kalt nachts. Also ordentlich dick, auch die Schuhe nicht vergessen, die sollten richtig warm sein.
Reicht also jetzt schon, wenn es dunkel ist, oder lieber morgens früh um 3 auch mal den Blick wagen?
Also gut, wer Frühaufsteher ist, kann das gerne tun. Aber es reicht normalerweise, wenn man so ungefähr eine Stunde nach Sonnenuntergang beobachtet. Also 20 Uhr, 21 Uhr ist eine gute Zeit und dann sehen Sie den winterlichen Sternenhimmel sehr, sehr gut.
Und wir merken uns 16., 17. März, dann hat Ihre Sternwarte, glaube ich, auch Tag der offenen Tür. Ne?
Tag der Astronomie, um 20 Uhr haben wir sie offen.
Sehr schön. Peter Kalwitz war das von der Sternwarte in Remscheid. Jetzt sage ich es am Schluss auch noch fast falsch. Vielen Dank auf jeden Fall für den Besuch.
Bitte.
Traurig, aber wahr. Lennep hat schon bessere Tage gesehen.
Nur vereinzelte Touristen verirren sich in den historischen Ortskern der früheren Hansestadt.
Gerade hier in dem Bereich Schwelmerstraße sieht man, wie die Ladenlokale leer stehen. Und oberhalb haben wir noch eine Gastronomie, die zu vermieten ist, schon seit vielen Jahren. Das Publikumsinteresse hier für den hinteren Bereich der Altstadt ist so schlecht, dass sich Einzelhandel hier nicht halten kann.
Ein Schritt in die richtige Richtung könnte das Designer Outlet Center sein. Das Versprechen des Investors klingt auch für Thomas Schmidtkamp verlockend. Mehr als 2 Millionen Gäste jedes Jahr.
Und wir erhoffen uns ganz klar von dem Publikumszuspruch im Rahmen des Doc-Interesses der Leute, die hier anreisen werden, dass wir den Leerstand hier sicherlich bekämpfen können.
Allerdings wissen auch die Lenneper, bis dahin ist es noch ein langer Weg. Das sieht auch Remscheids oberster Stadtplaner so. Immer wieder betont er, dass längst nicht alles geklärt ist, um keine zu großen Erwartungen zu wecken.
Derzeit sind sicherlich noch viele Gespräche zu führen, Gespräche mit der Landesregierung, mit der Bezirksregierung. Und ich kann euch hier nur noch mal sagen, wir haben jetzt 60% des Weges erreicht und 40% noch nicht erreicht. Und es ist nicht auszuschließen, dass von den Nachbargemeinden dieses Vorhaben nicht so positiv gesehen wird. Hier denke ich vor allen Dingen an das Ruhrgebiet dran, aber auch in Städte wie Köln und Düsseldorf.
Doch auch in Remscheid gibt es längst nicht nur Begeisterung. Wenn aus dem Kirmesplatz ein Outlet-Parkhaus wird, befürchten Anwohner wohl zu Recht mehr Verkehr. Auch die Verlegung des Röntgenstadions, hier soll das eigentliche Center entstehen, ist nicht unumstritten, gerade bei den Anwohnern des neuen Standorts in Hackenberg. Vor allem aber erwarten viele darauf, dass Oberbürgermeisterin und Investor konkrete Pläne vorstellen. So wie hier im September 2011, damals noch für das zunächst an der A1 bei Lüttringhausen geplante Center, das nicht genehmigt worden ist. Pläne und Skizzen für Lennep soll es schon in den nächsten Wochen geben.
Wir werden also zur Bürgerbeteiligung ein Grobkonzept von MacArthur Glen haben. Wir werden Grobkonzepte zur Erschließung haben, vor allem das verkehrliche Problem lösen, aber auch Lärm und was alles darum in dem Bereich halt wird da sein. Und wir wollen auch offen darüber mit den Bürgern diskutieren. Wir hoffen, dass wir von den Bürgern auch gerade was hier verkehrliche Bereiche betrifft, Verbesserungsvorschläge bekommen.
In Lennep dauert manch einem das alles zu lange. Schon die Idee, das Outlet Center zu bauen, habe für einen Schub gesorgt. Den müsse man jetzt nutzen.
Also wir gehen schon davon aus, dass hier gerade in der Innenstadt, in der Altstadt, sich von den Strukturen her eine ganze Menge entwickeln wird, verändern wird und auch verbessern wird.
Und so soll die heute verschlafene und oftmals triste Altstadt wieder das werden, was sie einmal war. Eine blühende ehemalige Hansestadt, eine Handelsstadt.
Ja, und morgen Abend soll es dazu um 18 Uhr in der Klosterkirche eine Diskussion geben und auch ein Investor hat dann sein Kommen zugesagt.
Eine Entscheidung.
Im Vatikan laufen die Vorbereitungen zur Wahl eines neuen Papstes. Noch sind nicht alle wahlberechtigten Kardinäle angekommen. Vatikansprecher Lombardi präsentierte bei seiner täglichen Pressekonferenz die Urnen, die traditionell bei der Papstwahl benutzt werden. Die Sixtinische Kapelle wurde am Mittag auf unbestimmte Zeit für die Besucher gesperrt. Hier sollen die 115 Kardinäle den Nachfolger von Papst Benedikt XVI. Bestimmen. Verteidigungsminister de Maizière hat sich in Afghanistan über die Rückzugsvorbereitungen der Bundeswehr informiert. Bis Ende 2014 sollen alle internationalen Kampftruppen abziehen. Derzeit sind noch etwa 4.350 deutsche Soldaten im Land stationiert.
Die Materialschleuse. Hier muss alles durch, geprüft und gewogen werden, was zurück nach Deutschland geht. Maschinengewehre, gepanzertes Gerät. Der Verteidigungsminister machte sich heute selbst ein Bild in Masai-Sharif, Knotenpunkt für den Abzug der Bundeswehr aus Afghanistan. Mehrere tausend Container werden hier beladen und später per Lkw, per Luftfracht oder auf der Schiene Richtung Deutschland geschickt. Ein logistisches Megaprojekt. Zuvor war de Maizière im OP North gewesen, dem nördlichsten und ehemals gefährlichsten Stützpunkt in der Provinz Baglan.
Das ist ein besonderer Ort. Hier hat sich ein Rollenwechsel vollzogen. Hier musste sich die Bundeswehr in besonderer Weise bewähren, kämpfen können und im Gefecht bestehen. Das hat sie hier gezeigt.
Die Bundeswehr wird diesen Außenposten noch in diesem Frühjahr räumen. 2014 endet der NATO-Einsatz am Hindukusch.
Springen wir aus der Zukunftsvision ganz kurz zurück in eine Zeit, in der die Damen, die in betuchten Familien auf Kinderacht gaben, noch Kindermädchen hießen. Heute heißen sie Supernannies. Während bei Mary Poppins noch ein Löffelchen voll Zucker zum Glück reichte, muss die Nanny von heute als 3-Sterne-Köchin glänzen. Statt superkalifragilistisk-expialigetisch muss die moderne Miss Poppins mit den Kindern mindestens Mandarin pauken und mit dem Luxusschlitten auf der Straße muss sie nun sogar schneller sein als einst mit dem Regenschirm in der Luft. Annette Dittert über die neumodischen Supernannies der Superreichen in London.
Seit sie über London einschwebte, Mary Poppins, der frühe Prototyp der sympathischen Supernanny, ist das britische Kindermädchen zur festen Marke geworden für die privilegierte bürgerliche Familienwelt. Aber so mühelos wie sie durch den Film aus den 50ern segelt, war das Nanny-Leben auch damals nicht. Vorbild für Buch und Film, das Norland College, einem im 19. Jahrhundert als Training School for Ladies gegründeten Elite-Institut, das heute gefragter ist denn je. Aber auch wenn die Ausgehuniformen noch dieselben sind, die Anforderungen haben sich doch sehr verändert. Im Jahr 2013 trainiert die Supernanny auf hartem Asphalt. Denn ihre Gegner heute sind nicht mehr etwaiges schlechtes Benehmen, sondern Kidnapper und Paparazzi. Training für den Ernstfall. Das hilft schon sehr, das zu üben. Du willst ja mit so einem Kind hinten nicht laut losschreien vor Angst. Und auch das Martial Arts Training dient nicht nur der Selbstverteidigung, sondern auch und vor allem dem Schutz des wertvollen Nachwuchses, auch wenn das für manche hier noch etwas ungewohnt scheint. Der Kinderwagen ist das Letzte, was du loslässt, klar? Sie sind höchste Priorität und du musst sie gegen alles verteidigen können. Die lieben, teuren Kleinen. Im London der Superreichen heutzutage wertvoller denn je. Denn die durchschnittliche Mary Poppins Familie lebt schon lange nicht mehr hier. Stattdessen Chinesen, Russen und Araber. Und die wollen immer seltsamere Dinge. Ich hatte gerade eine Anfrage für eine Nanny, die fließend Spanisch sprechen muss und Chinesisch unterrichtet. Für ein Baby, das nächste Woche geboren wird. Warum? Keine Ahnung. Und dann kommen sie tatsächlich in immer schwierigere Zusammenhänge. Wir haben viele Klienten aus dem Mittleren Osten. Und da müssen sie dann auch mit und geraten oft in turbulente Situationen. Es waren eben andere Zeiten, als Mary Poppins der weißen Mittelklasse Manieren beibrachte und das Aufräumen ein magischer Zauberspaß war. Wir haben immer noch Leute, die sagen, wir wollen Mary Poppins, aber dann kommen all die Extras. Vorbild aber bleibt sie für die moderne Supernanny, mit diesem strengen Blick, der am Ende immer für Ruhe sorgt.
Die Nanny Mary Poppins flog ja einst mit dem Regenschirm vom Himmel auf die Erde herab und klappte den dann zufrieden zusammen. Carsten Schwanke im Münchner Wetterstudio. Brauchen wir morgen etwa einen Regenschirm?
Nein, den Regenschirm können wir alle ganz getrost zu Hause lassen. Auch wenn es morgen nicht mehr ganz so sonnig wird, wie wir es heute hatten. Hier ein Satellitenfoto von heute Mittag. Fast überall wolkenfrei. Nur hier im Südwesten tauchten schon die ersten Schleierwolken auf, die sich weiter auf den Weg machen Richtung Deutschland und die uns am Morgen ein bisschen beschäftigen. Aber es bleibt auf jeden Fall trocken. Ein kurzer Blick noch zurück auf den heutigen Tag. Wir hatten es geschafft. In Duisburg waren es 18,0 Grad. Das sind die wärmsten 3 Orte von Nordrhein-Westfalen. Mehr als 17 Grad gab es auch noch in Stuttgart an der Wilhelma und in Siegsdorf am Nordrand der Chiemgauer Alpen hier durch Föhnunterstützung. Da war jetzt zum einzelnen Wetter in den einzelnen Schritten. Heute Nacht also kommen immer mehr von diesen Schleierwolken hier im Südwesten an. Ansonsten bleibt es aber oftmals auch klar und da, wo es am klarsten bleibt in der Osthälfte unseres Landes, wird es auch am kältesten. Hier überall frostige Werte, nur ganz im Westen bleibt es frostfrei. Morgen Vormittag dann erneut viel Sonnenschein, aber die Sonne muss sich den Platz am Himmel ein bisschen einteilen mit den Wolken. Die ersten Wolken ziehen nach Norden weiter. Gegen die Mittagszeit kommen dann neue Schleier- und Schichtwolken hier im Südwesten an und breiten sich am Nachmittag dann auf den Westen und Südwesten aus. Aber auch dann sollte kein Regen fallen. Die Temperaturen erreichen morgen übrigens ähnliche Werte wie heute. Das heißt also, in Nordrhein-Westfalen werden es rund 17 Grad sein. Auch hier am Neckar, vor allem Richtung Heidelberg, können es 17 Grad sein. 18 sogar noch einmal mit Föhnunterstützung am Alpenrand. Aber auch für alle anderen sind die Werte meistens zweistellig. 11 bis 15 Grad werden es verbreitet morgen Nachmittag und der Wind weht zu schwach aus unterschiedlichen Richtungen. Schauen wir auf die weiteren Aussichten und dann ändert sich das ein bisschen, auch mit dem Regenschirm. Am Donnerstag fallen die ersten Tropfen. Es sind meistens noch leichte Regenfälle. Am Freitag gibt es häufiger mal hier, mal dort, mal hier ein paar Regenschauer. Das Interessanteste ist vor allem, dass meistens die Temperaturen noch im zweistelligen Bereich bleiben. Aber hier sehen wir im Norden Deutschlands am Freitag schon nur noch 4 Grad. Aus Skandinavien rückt nämlich kühlere Luft zu uns heran, vor allem Richtung Wochenende. Wie kalt es hier wirklich wird, ist noch nicht ganz klar. Es könnte auch wieder winterlich werden. Ich will es noch nicht beschreien. Auf jeden Fall geht der Vorfrühling, den wir jetzt noch für den morgigen Tag erleben können, er geht zu Ende. Das heißt, morgen diese Sonne auf jeden Fall noch einmal nutzen.
Und genießen. Vielen Dank, Carsten Schwanke. Wir sehen uns morgen wieder. Bis dahin.